The banker has awarded Ram Sharan Mahat the Global and Asia Pacific Finance Minister of the Year awards for 2015 during one of the most turbulent years for the country. Two devastating earthquakes hit Nepal in 2015, and the country also established a new constitution, all in the same 12 months. And based on Mr. Mahat's proactive stance in trying to raise funds after the earthquake, and importantly in trying to keep a stable macroeconomy after the natural disasters. Based on this, we've decided to award him these two prizes. And I'm joined today by Mr. Mahat himself to discuss his work last year. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. It is my pleasure.
So, as I said, Nepal experienced two devastating natural disasters last year. We met at the Asian Development Bank meeting a week after this happened, and you were already very proactively looking to raise funds. In terms of the relief efforts, $150 million were raised immediately, and then you were key in putting together the international conference, which raised basically where attendees earmarked $4.1 billion. What were the key hurdles in trying to get these substantial funds raised after the earthquake?
The immediate problem was to, when you are raising money, you have to have a proper assessment of the damage done, loss and damage, and your requirements. So a comprehensive study had to be undertaken before we present it to the donors. So we immediately rushed into action. We mobilized about 200 to 300 experts to do the PD&A, what you call post-disaster need assessment. The idea was to make proper study of the estimate of the loss and damage and the priorities for reconstruction. That was basically for the reconstruction and rehabilitation. So we are determined to hold the conference in about 60 days after the devastating earthquake happened. So to hold that conference, we had to prepare the PD&A. So this team, about 23 subsectors, were mobilized to do the PD&A. We completed the PD&A in time, and decided to hold the conference on 25th June.
And you made a point of holding it in Kathmandu and nowhere else.
Exactly, because there were reservations about the idea of holding the meeting in Kathmandu, because people thought that the country is still not safe. You may not be able to attract good participation, and there may be another, aftershocks what is continuing. And one Japanese suggested that to hold it a little later. Similarly, there was a proposal that to hold it in New Delhi would be a good idea because it is closer, and even World Bank had offered facilities in Paris. But we were determined. I was particularly determined to hold it in Kathmandu also, Kathmandu itself, because we wanted the international community to have the first-hand knowledge, first-hand information. With their seen with their own eyes about the damage done. That is one thing, and we wanted to revive the sagging confidence of the business community. Business was down, tourism was down, people were demoralized, so economic activities had to be revived.
It was very quick in terms of mobilizing funds. There have been quite a few delays in terms of starting the reconstruction. Now it's been announced that the reconstruction efforts will begin on a practical level. What were the hurdles in starting the reconstruction process?
The problem was more political, because now to start the reconstruction work would need, because reconstruction had to be done quickly. So normal government regulations, processes, procedures would delay the thing to happen. So we had to have proper legislation for the extraordinary mechanism to execute the reconstruction task, because it had to simplify many of the rules, cut delays. So for that, a new legislation had to be brought out, and a new institution had to be created. This was called Reconstruction Authority, a separate with extraordinary powers. So we brought out a legislation through ordinance, but unfortunately, because of political tussle, it couldn't be replaced by an act in the parliament. It was delayed. And at the same time, there was change in government.
Of course,
There was change in government.
but I think on the economic front, I think the efforts after the earthquake were quite a success because, importantly, the macroeconomy, considering the two natural disasters, remained quite stable. Foreign exchange reserves are still high in Nepal. They're at $8.5 billion. Debt to GDP is only 25%. And most importantly, inflation is not really set to skyrocket tremendously next year. What are your basically expectations for inflation in the coming year?
I think it would go up to 10%, around 10. It would be contained in 10%. Last year we had 7% inflation rate. This year I think it would be around 10%, something like that. It is not just that the macro fundamentals were kept intact. It was a good performance. Our macro performance has been very good, and also the search and rescue operation immediately, and followed by that, followed by the relief activity. It was all done in time, and we were quite successful in handling the crisis like that. Because although support was coming from all over the world, the coordination part was very tough. We had something like 140 medical missions from various parts of the world. And to coordinate that, to assign responsibility, it was not easy. So that was all handled very carefully. And about 7,500 people, 7,000 plus people were airlifted from inaccessible remote corners because the damage was mainly in remote areas where they had inferior quality buildings. Nepalese people are very resilient people. Even in the immediate aftermath of the earthquake, people started picking up their life and even building temporary shades with corrugated sheets and with the tarpaulins, tents and all that. Life is reviving. That shows the hope and confidence on the part of the people. That is the strength of our society.
But I think now a main hurdle in trying to continue these efforts and also the reconstruction program is, of course, the political and mainly social unrest that Nepal is facing now. So as I said, the new constitution has been put in place. Unfortunately, there have been uprisings in southern Nepal from the ethnic Madhesi people. They do not feel represented in the internal boundaries set by the constitution, and therefore there's been an effective blockade of the Nepal-India border. I mean, how much of this is affecting the Nepal's economy, the reconstruction efforts, and what is the solution in your opinion?
Precisely. I think the reconstruction report got delayed, has been hampered, first by the Madhesi uprising, and much of the uprising is attributed to, false propaganda. It's not real. We are now coming to a negotiated settlement with some, adjustment in the constitution, which is not very major. And that was, got bolstered by the de facto Indian blockade. That was, that reinforced the uprising, reinforced the agitation, as a result of which what happened now? Supply lines were disrupted.
There is a fuel crisis.
There is a fuel crisis. When at a time, you may be surprised to know, the world price is the lowest in about a decade now. But Nepalese are paying, at least in the informal market, 10 times the price of international price. For 1 liter of petrol or diesel, they are paying something like $3, $4 for one liter. Construction materials are in supply. Cement and steels and all other construction materials are in short supply. Because of that, we could not start the reconstruction work in time. Once reconstruction works starts in full steam. For that, of course, the embargo, the de facto blockade that is happening at the moment along the Indian border from the Indian government side, I think will end. And once normal business starts, reconstruction work will start immediately, and reconstruction activity taking place, the growth rate is bound to pick up.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Mahat, and good luck on all your new ventures with, right now, the Nepali Congress Party. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure for me. I express my thanks and appreciation for this honor once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.